find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
My sound waves look perfectly normal.
Nice. Mine look sexy. They're sexy sound waves. They've got humps and bumps in all the right places.
Yeah. Welcome to sound podcasting.
Hey, why don't you sit on down a while and get comfy? Look at these humps and bumps.
This is more of a visual experience for an audio medium. It's very confusing.
That was our guest episode of the Soundwave podcast.
In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie, voluptuous Soundwaves Schwartz.
Oh, and I am Katelyn. Just a bunch of teeth. Heart.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've got all my teeth.
Oh, I was thinking like, do you know, I think it's called like a teratoma, which is like a tumor that has like hair and teeth.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those. That's gnarly.
Yeah, I think I looked into maybe talking about them on the show, but I think I avoided it because it's pretty gross.
Well, yeah, when you think about it, a lot of those things are made of the same, like, basic materials, so it happens sometimes. You get an extra thing.
Yeah, your body gives you a not-so-fun surprise.
Yeah, like a third nipple.
Hey, I'd say that is a fun surprise.
Oh, wow. Well, it's April. Welcome to April, everybody. We made it.
The flowers are blooming, the corpses are decomposing, and there's a hideous wind that keeps blowing through Seattle that made me terribly cold all day.
Yeah, there's been sunshine, but then hail, and then sleet and rain all in the same day. It's been a little chaotic over here in Seattle.
But we thrive on chaos, don't we, Katoon?
Yeah, and on never knowing how many jackets you are going to need.
Yeah, or the thickness of the jackets. Completely judged it wrong today and was viciously whipped to death by the wind.
Yeah, it was shockingly fast.
Yes, my death at the hands of the wind was shockingly fast. How I gave up so quickly.
Well, I'm just gonna have a little sip of water. Oh. And then I guess we could just dive in.
I think so. I miss talking about bones.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Thanks, Boneheads, for letting us take a little break. I'll be quite candid with you. The break was not scheduled. We set up to record as we normally do, and I had done my research on a topic that we had already covered.
Yeah, it
happened.
It happened. And I'm grateful for it. But it was really funny because you did look at me and you say, I think I heard this on My Favorite Murder. But I Googled it and My Favorite Murder and I couldn't find anything. And I was like, is it possible you heard it from us?
Is it possible that you just heard it because you were a part of the conversation?
It turned out it was possible.
Yes. So we were going to record something else the next day on the fly, but then I found a topic that I actually wanted to like sink my teeth into. So I was like, let's take a week. And it turns out it was a nice little break. My parents came and visited. We bought some plants. We watched an Adam Sandler movie in my apartment. It was great.
Which Adam Sandler movie, if I may be so bold to ask?
Murder Mystery on Netflix.
That's thematically appropriate.
Yeah, it was kind of, they both seemed to like it. I don't know.
Do your parents like true crime?
Yes and no, where I feel like the only show we can agree on perfectly every time to watch as a trio is NCIS.
Ha! Yeah, a classic.
Yeah,
A classic
yeah.
in the procedural canon.
But then with my other, like, true crime shows, I feel like they just tolerate it.
I was just interested. I wanted to know
Yeah.
if perhaps one of your parents was the true crime person, or if they both liked it, or if neither.
I don't know. It's a neutral, I think. Okay, so I'm going to take it back to the 1840s with my topic today. My fresh topic.
We love the 1840s.
Watch, we've picked the same topic now. No. I know we haven't.
I sorely don't think that we have. Yeah.
What if? My sources for this were Smithsonian Magazine, allthat'sinteresting.com, and then the Canadian Encyclopedia.com.
A different encyclopedia than our crass American encyclopedia.
Yes, because this story takes place in what is now known as Ontario, Canada.
Ontario, Canada.
So, in July 1843, on a farm in Ontario, Canada, a gruesome...
I'm sorry, where?
Sorry, Canada.
Thank you.
So, a gruesome discovery was made on this farm, and it was the bodies of the homeowner, Thomas Kinnear, and his housekeeper, Nancy Montgomery. Some sources say they were found in the cellar.
Oh.
He had been shot, and she had been hit with an axe and then strangled.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a lot of different ways of killing people.
Yeah, pretty intense right off the bat.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there was no lead up. I'm starting with the murder.
No, I like it. It's just interesting because in all of the murders that you've told me and that I've heard off different podcasts, I think it's very interesting and unusual to have a set of murders that has a bunch of different types of fatal injuries in it. Like,
yes.
You said shot and bashed and axed.
Yes, and strangled.
And strangled. See?
Yeah, lots.
That's a lot of work.
Yes. And then, allegedly, the two of them were lovers. They weren't married. She was his housekeeper, but they were lovers. And...
Was he married? Wait, was he married to someone else, or was he just single?
He was single. At her autopsy, it unfortunately was found out that she was pregnant.
Oh my god, this is getting juicier and juicier.
Yes, scandal.
But I mean, not really. If they weren't dating other people, I guess they were lovers.
This
but
is the 1840s. It's all about class, and he's a landowner, and she's a housekeeper.
I'm sorry. I forgot that we were in.
Yeah, of course. By today's standards, this would be a perfectly normal relationship.
By today's standards, this would be fine. In the 1840s, this is horrendous.
Yes.
Continue.
We've come a long way in some regards. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I gotta get my head back in 1840. I gotta get myself a reality check.
Yeah, stop thinking about 2022. Just forget about it.
I am. I'm lacing up my little wooden shoes.
What? Oh, okay. Like the wooden shoes that they wear in Holland? Like clogs?
That's what came to mind. I was thinking about those tiny, like, Victorian witch shoes, you know?
I don't.
They do little lady feet.
I don't. Hey, boneheads, if you know what tiny witch shoes are, comment below.
Fucking fine. I will send you a picture to post along with this episode's shit. Future Sophie, go find that picture right now. And to make sure everyone knows, come back and tell me you found it. Ah, yeah, bitch, I got you.
All right, now back to 1840s Canada.
Got my shoes on.
And this disgusting murder. So there were some things missing from the home. And then also missing were the two servants that were like live-in servants at this farm. And this was 20-year-old James McDermott and 16-year-old Grace Marks. They were Irish immigrants, and they both had just started working at the property like a few weeks ago. McDermott was a soldier in a Canadian, army regiment. Not a lot is known about either of them, unfortunately, but Grace was born in Northern Ireland. She was probably one of 8 children. And then when she was a teenager, her family came over from Ireland to Canada, and she just like worked as a domestic servant until she got this job at Thomas Kinnear's house. And pretty much from the beginning, they were the only suspects in the murder. I don't know why, but that's just what was told to me.
That's interesting. I wonder why people... Well, I bet you're going to tell me why people would think that.
Well... because they were for sure involved.
Hell yeah!
But the reason this case is so interesting and why it has, like, stayed interesting is that it's not really clear who was the aggressor and who was the, like, more submissive one. Like, it's not really clear the dynamic between the James McDermott and Grace Marks.
Interesting. Do go on.
I shall. And I'm sorry, if I'm having a lot of vocal fry, which I feel like I am, I'm having really bad allergies right now. This fucking weather shit is pulling up all kinds of pollen or something that's not agreeing with me. I don't like it.
I'm sorry about your poor sinuses.
So... they got away for a little while, but pretty soon McDermott and Marks were tracked down in New York and they were arrested and brought back to face trial for this murder. On the day of McDermott's trial, because they tried them separately, apparently so many people were packed into the courtroom that they were worried that the floors were going to give way.
Can you even imagine?
No.
Like, what it would have been like to be in that courtroom on that day? Like... the energy must have been insane in there.
Yeah, and for some of the reasons that we talked about, this case was really like a media sensation because the victims weren't married, they had differing classes. And then also the servants that were being accused of the murder, it was like, what's their relationship and why did they do this? And so everybody wanted to know what the fuck was going on.
Well, you know humans, nosy by nature.
Yes. So basically, the trial was a clusterfuck. This whole thing is a clusterfuck. There are so many fucking versions of events. There are so many different people telling different stories. Nobody can corroborate anything. So it's just nuts. So I'm going to tell you like a little bit of things that they said, but there are it's just a small piece of the picture, but basically there's a lot of gray areas in this one. Everybody was trying to save their own skin because this ended up being a death penalty case.
Oh shit.
So Grace said that everything was pretty quiet for a few weeks. The only thing that was out of the ordinary was that the housekeeper, Nancy, was scolding James McDermott because he wasn't doing his work properly. McDermott claims that Grace and Nancy fought all the time, but he did admit that Nancy was, quote, overbearing to him, and he said that he had complained to Thomas Kinnear, who owned the farm, that he was not down with the treatment he was receiving from Nancy.
He was getting micromanaged.
Yeah, that's what everybody kind of thought was going on. Other than Nancy, I think she thought she was in the right.
Well, you know, to be on Nancy's side for a second, sometimes when you're at work and you see someone fiddle fucking around and they're genuinely not doing it right, sometimes you have to go up and fucking tell them.
Yes. I mean, yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yes, that's true. And yeah, especially if you're like training somebody, you have to just like be like, hey, you're doing that wrong, but like such a good job, like good try. You know, there's that fine line you have to walk.
Maybe she didn't use the compliment sandwich.
Ooh.
Where you do a compliment and then you give critique and then you do a compliment at the end.
Yeah. Good tip. So when we talk about the trial and what people thought about the different people like involved, you know, newspapers at the time and whatever. So depending on where you read about the murderers, so-called murderers, Grace and James, Grace is either, quote, cast as the cunning instigator of a brutal crime who overwhelmed McDermott with her wicked wiles, or as an unwitting and somewhat dim-witted accomplice who had instead been strong-armed into the murder by the more powerful McDermott. So it's either one or the other. You can't have it both ways.
I guess they could not have done it equal parts, apparently. But that's fascinating, because I feel like the view of women at the time, like a female murderer at the time, especially like a young one.
16.
Yes, exactly. As a child,
Mm-hmm.
a female child murderer would be highly sensationalized. I mean, it would be today.
Right, yeah.
I think it's always going to be. And depending, like you said, depending on where you get your information, you build a totally different character of this young lady.
Yes. So no one has any idea. But apparently she wasn't very emotional during the trial. When it's like, also, you're 16 years old. Of course, we know now you can never predict how emotional someone is going to be in a particular situation. She did faint when they read her sentence. And apparently she showed up to court wearing Nancy Montgomery's clothes.
Ooh.
Bad luck.
Grace, that's a bad look. Yeah, that's a really, really, honey, that says guilty.
Yeah. She had them on, I forgot to mention, she had them on when she was arrested as well.
Ooh. I know that in the 1800s, like, this is pre-industrial revolution, pre-mass textile production, so clothes were still probably being made in a more handmade capacity, so, like, it would make a lot of sense to take someone's clothes if they fit you, but not if you killed them.
Yeah,
it makes you look very guilty.
It does make you look very guilty, and also stealing things from the house and fleeing the scene of the crime makes you look pretty darn guilty as well.
It does.
So, of course, during the trial, Grace and James were trying to pin the blame on one another to try and, have a lighter sentence. And that's why there were so many different, versions of events, because they were 16 and 20. So it's not like these are geniuses. They're still marinating.
Yes, they're still marinating. Their brains are still cooking. And, when you're 16 and when you're even 20, I was literally talking about this with my therapist the other day. We were talking about why children can be so mean, because we were talking about high school. And she was like, literally, your brain is, not yet, not until your mid-20s is your brain, fully, at capacity to do things like empathize with other people fully. And see other sides of situations. So in a situation like this, it makes total sense that they're like, fuck, they did it, not me, they did it.
And the stakes are life or death, so...
Yes, oh yeah. Oh haha, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they were found guilty. They both had, they had admitted to being there and participating in some way or not, it was one of them, so they were both found guilty.
Ugh.
Or I guess I shouldn't say it was one of them. It could have been both of them. We have no idea.
They could have done it individually or as a team.
Who knows? Anyway, James was hung, and then Grace, some accounts say that she was sentenced to death, but then they commuted her sentence to life. But however it shook out, she was given life in prison, basically probably because she was a young woman.
I mean, yeah, I think things probably could have shook out pretty differently for her if she had been not a woman and maybe not a white woman.
Exactly. So James McDermott, on the day that he went to the gallows, he added another layer to this craziness. He said that Grace had followed him into the cellar after he had hit Nancy with the axe, and Nancy wasn't quite dead yet. And then Grace brought a scarf or a piece of cloth with her and strangled Nancy herself.
Whoa.
He apparently was saying this on the day he was going to be executed.
Why are you saving this for the last minute, guy?
Well, it also it might just be a last ditch effort to be I have so much more information. It wasn't just me. It just sucks.
That makes sense.
He probably did something bad. He's admitting to hitting her with the axe. He probably shot the guy, Thomas. But yeah, I mean, it's all bad.
Yeah, no, both of these people sound violent.
Yes. So Grace Marks ends up serving 29 years in prison. She spent a little bit of time at the Provincial Lunatic Asylum, but she was only there for 15 months, thank God, and was sent back to her, home, Kingston Penitentiary, her home for most of her life. While she was in prison, she apparently, impressed certain people who helped petition for her release, and she was given a pardon in 1872.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then apparently when she was released, they asked her, I love this, 27 liberation questions that were every outgoing prisoner had to answer these 27 questions.
Liberation questions?
Yes.
What the fuck?
I don't know.
It's an exit survey for prison?
I know. It's just why are we doing this?
No, just let them go.
Just let them go.
For fuck's sake. Don't subject them to this weird survey.
So she was asked, quote, "What has been the general cause of your misfortunes, and what has been the immediate cause of the crime for which you have been sent to the penitentiary?" And she said, quote, "Having been employed in the same house with a villain."
Whoa!
So she's maintained her innocence this whole time, basically.
Yeah. She's like, not me.
Yeah.
I'm not the cause.
No, and then apparently after getting out of prison, she went to New York and then just was never heard from again.
Well, that makes a lot of fucking sense.
But
a big juicy butt.
Kind of. About a century later, her story caught the attention of a Canadian author that you might know named Margaret Atwood. She wrote The Handmaid's Tale.
Okay. Yes. Interesting.
So she was really fascinated by this murder trial, and she apparently thought about it for decades. She wrote Handmaid's Tale. She was still fascinated by this murder. And then eventually in 1996, she publishes a book called Alias Grace. And this book tells the story of the murders, life before the murders a little bit, then the murders, and then it's set about 10 to 15 years after the murders, and it's Grace telling a psychiatrist her version of events. So we're going back and forth in time.
Ooh, I want to read this.
You can read it. You definitely can read it. Or, motherfucker, you can watch it.
Oh!
And this is why I took the extra week, because I wanted to watch this fucking show. So in 2017, Netflix released the television program, limited series, I should say, Alias Grace. It's directed by Mary Herron, written by Sarah Polley, and then Sarah Gadon plays Grace Marks. And it is fucking fascinating. All 6 episodes are so creepy and so eerie and spooky, and you're so drawn in by her story, and yet you have no idea if she's telling the truth or if any of this really happened or what. It's a really good show.
Do you think I would like it?
Yeah, it's a little bit gory. It's the 1840s, so it's
So nothing was gory in the 1840s.
Yeah, it does. There's a little bit of her time in the insane asylum is on there, so it's really there are some scary moments where she's flashing back to really scary things. And Margaret Atwood even said that she took some liberties with the story because it's just such a fucking crazy story. But there's a part in the show where she's on the boat from from Ireland to Canada, and her mother sees 3 crows on the ship and goes, "My feet will not touch land again." And then, cut to, the next day, and she is dead, in the bed next to Grace Marks. It was heartbreaking. It was just whoa. Yeah.
That's so intense.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That sounds good. I might try.
It's only 6 episodes. I had definitely seen it before, but I wanted to watch it again because, like I said, it came out in 2017, so I probably watched it around then. And I didn't know, it says based on true events, but I had no idea, all the intricacies and how well researched, and yeah, it's very good. Well done. I recommend it. 10 out of 10. I was on the edge of my seat.
Ugh.
But I wasn't really, because I knew I would never know the answer.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, we didn't get a deathbed confession from her, did we?
Oh no, she like fell off the face of the earth.
Of course, yeah. That's the thing about these. Whenever you do one of these unsolved boys, they're like, it's solved, but like, we don't know what really, really happened. Like, we don't know what happened in that house that day.
No.
They worm around in my brain. I can understand why Margaret Atwood thought about this for decades.
Yeah.
Because it's fascinating. And Grace seems like a very fascinating and complicated person. Was she a murderer? Was she an accomplice? Was she a little bit of both?
Yeah. Unclear.
But I don't think that I had heard of that.
Hell yeah.
That's nuts. Shivers.
Yeah. That's what I'm here for.
It just always makes me think of, I forget which well, it was the Louisiana Axe murders, maybe. I was thinking about, why in the 1800s is everyone always killing each other with axes? You got that. You got the Villisca axe murders. There's the, like, those train murders where the guy was maybe going across the country axing people.
I feel like they talked about this on my Morbid podcast that I listened to. And, like, axes were just everywhere.
Yeah,
everybody had
that's
an
what you were
axe.
saying.
Like, you had to use an axe to chop wood for your fireplace because that was the only way you were going to get heat. Everybody just had an axe.
Yeah, so it's just around, I guess.
Yeah.
Well.
Weapon of opportunity back then. Now an axe is like, what the fuck? Why do you have an axe? In the city? No.
In this economy? An axe? You must be crazy.
Every axe I've seen in the city is like rusted over.
Yeah. Well, like we've said before, we had an axe when we lived in West Seattle. I cannot remember where we found it. I think it was at the house when we moved in.
Sure.
In the, like, weird, creepy crawl space basement that Nick used as his woodworking shop. And we used to use it to get out anger about our shitty retail jobs by chopping the ground.
Yeah.
Which is not safe. Don't just chop randomly into the ground.
Don't advocate for this.
No, especially not with a dull, rusty axe. For the love of God, listen to what I say. Don't do what I do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But speaking of listening to what I say, do you want to listen to an ad break?
Of course.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that true crime can be a real buzz killer. So why not pair it with a nice glass of wine?
Join us, Macy and Nicole, the hosts of Buzzkillers, a true crime podcast, as we drink our way through new bottles of wine every week, while navigating true crime cases, conspiracy theories, and even some spooky haunts.
The deep dives are kept light with banter and personal tales, and even the occasional boozy hiccup.
Listeners are encouraged to grab a drink of any kind and tune in every Sunday as we tell the tales of the wicked that plague this world.
Buzzkillers can be streamed on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you like to listen. Check out our website, www.buzzkillerspodcast.com, for more information.
Well, I think that was the best ad yet.
Thank you so much, Podmoth. We love you.
We really do. It's excellent to be part of your network. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
All right. Now time for my bony tale.
Oh my God. You are revving up right now.
I'm excited. I've been holding on to my story for a week.
You have, yeah.
I've been sitting on it like a mother hen on her eggs, waiting for them to explode.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I would like to start off with a hypothetical for you.
Okay.
So, you're a wealthy lady in, say, I don't know, the 1840s. And your husband used to be the governor of Tasmania, but now he's been politically kind of slandered.
Ooh.
Like, everyone hates him, and he's really fallen out of favor.
Oh.
What would you do to, like, get him back on top? Like, you're his wife, you gotta do something. What would you want to do?
Well, it's the
What'd you suggest?
It's the 1840s.
Oh, yeah, bitch. It is also the 1840s.
Okay, so this is not what I would do currently, but if I'm in the 1840s, I think I've got to give him a son or something.
That is very 1840s. Excellent 1840s attitude. But you're wrong.
Okay.
You want to know the correct answer?
I do, yeah.
Send him to the Arctic.
Oh! Okay.
We're going to be talking about the Franklin expedition today.
Okay, I haven't heard of this.
Let me just rattle off my sources for you real quick to get them out of the way. We have one from history.com, one from All That's Interesting, Wikipedia, futurism.com, historydaily.com, National Geographic, and Wikipedia for a third and fourth time.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Franklin expedition. This was an expedition that was set up by Sir John Franklin, badgered by his fucking wife, no kidding, to find the Northwest Passage, which was a passageway that was from the Atlantic to the Pacific through the Canadian ice-strewn Arctic.
Nice.
So we're back in Canada in the 1840s.
Okay, who could have seen this coming?
I don't know, but it's really specific. That's why when you were like, we're in the Canada in the 1840s, I'm like, bitch, you better not be.
Oh my god, what if I had picked the same topic as you? That would have been nuts.
That would have been nuts.
It would have been too much to handle. I think we would have exploded in anger. I would have.
Yes, like the baby bird eggs. Yeah. I would have ripped my own face off and then mailed it back to myself in anger. So, why was this Northwest Passage such a big fucking deal? Well, it could really open up trade routes for Europe because to make trade
With Asia.
sometimes they would have to go through these extremely long and arduous sea journeys to like go around the Horn. So they're trying to figure out a way to go up and over instead of south and around.
Mm-hmm.
If you know what I mean. So it would cut your journey down drastically.
Sure.
And so the search for this trade passage has been plaguing Europe for like centuries. Everyone in Europe is like, if only we could go this way, but there's so much ice. And lots of people had tried, is the thing. Lots of people had tried to do this. And lots of people were doing Arctic expeditions at the time. But the thing is that the Arctic, that we were doing the expeditions at this point, so it was unexplored.
Mm-hmm.
So people tended to, get lost and stay lost.
I bet. Yeah, that's some treacherous work.
Yeah, exactly. Hazardous. So in 1845, Captain Sir John Franklin. He's not just a captain, he's not just a sir. He's Captain Sir.
Interesting.
John Franklin, yeah. And he was about to be 60. And like I said, his political career was in the toy. He had been governor of Tasmania and really doinked that up, been kind of backstabbed politically a little bit. And his wife was like, hey, you've done a couple of Arctic adventures before. What if you won back the public by finding this Northwest Passage? Everyone would love you.
She has a point.
She has a point. Everyone would love him, right?
Yeah.
But it's quite a tall order.
Yeah, maybe a little naive, this passage that nobody else has been able to find, but okay.
So, like I said, this is his fourth Arctic expedition and the third as commander for him. And on a previous Arctic expedition, he almost starved to death and became known as, quote, the man who ate his boots, because he did eat his boots.
Is that why everybody hated him?
No. That was... I think that's something people actually liked about him.
Okay, that was the good thing. Okay.
I didn't go too much into the political intrigue because I really didn't care.
Who cares? He had fallen out of favor. Who cares why? Or if it was true.
They didn't like him.
Yeah.
So he decides what his wife is saying makes a lot of sense to him. So he's like, yeah, I'm going to do it. So on May 19th, 1845, Captain John Sir...
Sir is his middle name.
Captain John Sir Franklin. Oh my god. Well, Captain John Sir Franklin, I'm going to just keep doing it. Him and 133 other men get aboard the Erebus and the Terror, which is great name for a boat. You always want to name your boat something like the Terror, the Disaster, the Catastrophe. Those are always great names for boats.
Yeah, it makes me feel really at ease.
So they depart from Greenheath, England, and their ships are kind of outfitted in the most state-of-the-art shipping technology of the time. They literally are like ironclad. They have iron sides to them to deal with the ice. And they also brought along 3 years' worth of provisions on these boats, which included 32,289 pounds of preserved meat, 1,008 pounds of raisins, and 580 gallons of pickles.
Okay.
So they're going to be eating well.
Yeah, like kings.
With their meat, raisins, and pickles. Yummy.
Sounds like the worst picnic for 3 years. Who knew pickles lasted that long? I don't think they do.
I don't know. They sure had a lot of them, though. So we know a lot about these preparations of the ship because before they got well and truly started off in earnest, they ended up dropping off, I think, like 5 or 6 people on a random island because these people were like, I have a bad feeling. I would like to get off.
I would rather get onto a random ass island than go into the Arctic with you, motherfuckers.
I mean, they didn't say it like that.
I'm sure. They probably had more tact.
Yeah. But this dropping off of people, and then they were also seen by a passing ship in northeastern Canada's Baffin Bay in July of that year. And then the Terror and the Erebus were not seen again.
Oh, shit.
These ships seem to just disappear. There are subsequent discoveries that we're going to talk about. We're going to go through kind of all of the clues, try to put together a little timeline of what happened to the Terror and the Erebus, because people did, although the ships, no one had seen the ships for a while, people started finding remnants of their adventure.
Sure. I'm glad they didn't just vanish off the face of the earth.
Yeah, story done. And they were gone, and they were gone, and there was nothing.
And good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, everybody. Bon voyage.
Thanks for listening to any.
So the first kind of clues to what had happened to these two ships was found about 5 years later in 1850 by American and British searchers, because there were a lot of people who then subsequently went out to look for these ships. Because, it was like 140-ish people and, a pretty big and publicized expedition. But so in 1850, these American and British searchers found 3 graves dating back to 1846 on an uninhabited part of land in Baffin Bay, like a little island called Beachy Island. And we will come back to those later.
Okay. They were graves. Okay.
They were graves. So then in 1854, a Scottish explorer named John Ray met up with some Inuit residents of the area, and they had items that had once belonged to people on the Franklin expedition. And he was like, that's interesting. Will you tell me more about that?
Yeah, can I see those?
Yeah, basically being like, hey, can I look at that? And they were like, yeah, sure, you can look at this. Also, I'll let you know that there are piles of human bones spotted around this area. And we also heard stories about white guys eating each other. So could be that. Just
piles of bones everywhere on this remote island. What the fuck is going on?
Right. So naturally, these conversations lead him to believe that the crew of the Franklin expedition, starved to death and ended up resorting to eating each other, to cannibalism.
Ugh.
And later, these piles of bones would be analyzed in the 1980s and 90s, and there were actually knife marks found on these skeletal remains, and they had found that a lot of the bones were cracked open. So it leads us to believe that they were eating
that was accurate.
Yeah, that was accurate.
Ooh.
Because of course it was. So some other clues also came in. There was an abandoned shed on a nearby island with 2 skeletons and a lot of like personal items. There were a couple of letters that were found in various places that we know that they have been. There are a couple of islands that they visited. And you'll hear me reference a couple of notes because the guys on the Franklin expedition left a couple of different weird notes in different places. And we'll talk a little bit more about those later. But some of these notes were written out phonetically, some were written backwards, and some were just like not decipherable.
What the fuck? That is so weird.
Right? These guys were getting weird out there.
Apparently, they were like, we're on a treasure hunt. Let's make another one.
Yeah. And I mean, and some of the most damning evidence comes from Inuit stories where they were basically like, yeah, we saw 2 ships full of white guys and they like slowly died out there.
Yeah, pretty hard to miss that.
Yeah, and everyone was like, oh, that's a nice story. I wonder what happened to them.
Oh my god.
They just told you, guys.
Yeah.
They just told you.
Yeah.
So this is kind of it for about 170 years. This is all we have to work with. Then, in September of 2014, a search team finds the wreck of the Erebus.
Whoa.
So it's hanging out in just about 36 feet of water. And then 2 years later, they also find the Terror. So we've got the ships now. And this gets people really excited because they think now that we have the ships, we'll definitely know what happened to them. But one of the first things that's odd about the finding of these ships is that they're not really where they thought they would be. According to, there was a note that was dated 1848 that said that the ships had been abandoned and gave their location. But when these ships were found in 2014 and 2016, the Terror was about 60 miles off of where the 1848 note had said it was, and then the Erebus was about 30 miles off from where they said it was. But if we look at like ice moving patterns, that's what Brandy Lockhart, who is an underwater archaeologist with Parks of Canada, she thinks that this makes a lot of sense because ice moves.
Yeah, also underwater archaeologist. Coolest job ever.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wish that I could go back and like redo everything, be an underwater archaeologist.
Hey, there's still time.
There's still time for me. Okay, so when it was found, the Erebus was almost perfectly preserved, except for like the stern had been like broken apart by ice. Archaeologist Ryan Harris said, quote, "The ship is amazingly intact. You look at it and find it hard to believe that it's a 170-year-old shipwreck. You don't see this kind of thing very often."
No.
No, you really don't. But the stern is kind of significant that it was broken up with ice like that because that's where Franklin's cabin was.
Huh.
And there's an interesting Inuit story that dates back to about the time of the ships being abandoned, that a group of Inuit people were just walking around. They find one of these ships, the Erebus, and they walked into one of the rooms. And there was a man sitting in a chair there. And like they were like, "Hi, buddy."
What's
but
up?
he was clearly he was dead.
Of course. Yeah.
But he had like a big grin on his face, which
I mean,
could be
we know that happens in the decomp process, but imagine walking in there and being like, "Hi, oh no."
I would be like, "And we're leaving. This is why we don't do this, you guys." But we're not really sure if we don't know if this happened or if this is just a legend or if something slightly different happened. And we certainly don't know who it was. We do know that Franklin did die on board. Captain John Sir Franklin.
Of course.
Because another one of these notes was found saying that he had died before the ships were abandoned. So I would like to go back to these graves that were found on Beechy Island, because of course those are the most fascinating to me. These graves that were found in 1850, they were found alongside the ruins of a stone hut, some food cans, and then these 3 graves, which I will show you, which is actually now 4. This is a picture of those graves that I was talking about.
Oh, creepy. So, like, desolate, these 4 little graves in a row.
Just on a bare Arctic beach.
Ugh.
So, these are the graves of John Torrington, William Brain, and John Hartnell. Torrington had died about 7 months into the expedition, which kind of led to more questions as to why did he die so early. In 1976, these graves were actually rediscovered because they discovered them. They were like, cool graves. We'll tell people about these. Left, and then they didn't do anything about it. But in 1976, these graves were rediscovered, and in the 1980s, an anthropologist named Owen Beatty got permission to exhume and autopsy these bodies to try to figure out how they died and to give us more clues about the Franklin expedition. They began their exhumation on August 17th, 1984, and they began with John Torrington. His coffin was about 5 feet down into the permafrost, so they had a pretty hard time digging through down to get him.
I wonder how that must have been hard for them to put him down there.
Yeah, it would have been a lot of work, especially for a bunch of starved sailors.
Yeah, wow.
There was a handwritten, note nailed to the lid of Torrington's coffin, which said that he was just 20 years old when he died on January 1st of 1846.
Mm-hmm.
When they opened his coffin, he was so incredibly well preserved that they, looked him in the face.
That is so creepy. But awesome. Creepy awesome.
Would you like to see a picture of this man?
Yes. Yes, I would.
This, now, for people who are going to go look at this on the Instagram, this is a massive trigger warning. I would say this is maybe one of the grosser bodies. And I'll explain why I feel that way.
Okay. Ugh. Oh my god, it is really gross.
It's terrifying not because it's bloody or gory or anything like that.
It's too real.
It's too real. The man looks like, he's dead. He's very dead. But you can look him in the face. You can look him in his open fucking eyes.
Yeah, that's really scary.
Cheeks, skin, it's all there. If I opened that coffin up, sleep, goodbye. I have never heard of you anymore. I do not sleep. I nearly stand and look into the distance and see those fucking eyes for forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't ever dream again. I don't think, only nightmares.
I would make sure I would never dream again in case this fucker popped up.
Oh my god, I don't even want to post this on our Instagram. No, we will.
I'm sorry.
We will.
I will do that thing where it's what Instagram does, where it's do you really want to see this? And you can click yes or no.
Okay.
So for a little description, he's dressed in a gray cotton shirt, and he has a polka dotted scarf around his chin.
He looks like that's something they would. Did they just do that to keep his
an old fashioned headache?
Keep his jaw
to keep his jaw from falling down. Yeah, they had to set his jaw. So he was just grinning creepily and not looking like he's screaming.
Yeah.
His body inside the casket was laid on a bed of wood chips, and then his limbs were tied together with strips of linen, kind of to keep him in a transportable shape, probably.
Well, yeah, because I'm assuming he didn't die when they were on that island, so they probably just had him on the ship for a while.
Yeah, that is definitely what happened. He definitely died aboard the ship. So they had to thaw his body to do an autopsy on it, and they poured water on the ice to slowly melt it away, and they were trying not to like cause any damage to the body, because if they were to defrost him too quickly, that would be bad. They found that he was very sick when he died. He was also very thin. His ribs were visible, and he probably only weighed 85 pounds at the time of his death. Just so hideous for a 20-year-old young man.
Yeah.
They decided to take tissue samples, to like analyze them to see what they could find out. From these tissue samples, like you said, they discovered that he was probably stored aboard the ship before his grave was dug. They also showed fatal levels of lead in his system, which would definitely contribute to his death, possibly due to canned food that they were eating on the ship.
Sure.
They were not totally sure what killed him. It could be one of a couple of different things, or kind of all of them. The lead poisoning, starvation, pneumonia, or just like straight up exposure. Just like being out in the Arctic.
Yikes.
Yeah. Next, they exhumed John Harnell in 1986, so they went back to do that. And he was also well preserved in the same way. I don't have a picture of him. It's okay. He looks a lot like his shipmate. What's interesting about him is that there were some incisions on him, so they think, and his organs had been removed, so they think that he had been previously autopsied at some point.
Huh.
Yeah, which is really weird. Did they do that on the ship?
Yeah, like why?
Yeah. So this was obviously a huge setback for them in figuring out what killed him.
Yeah.
No organs, kind of. But they did the same thing of taking samples from him. Next, they dug up Private William Brain, who was probably the last of the three to die. And his body was in the worst condition. And they think that he was probably left out in the open for a longer time before he was buried. So it's possible that he had died on the island. It also looked like his burial was a bit hasty. They hadn't given him the same treatment as the other two. Instead of like tying up his face the way the others were, they just put a red handkerchief on top of his face.
Okay, not the same, but nice try, guys.
Yeah, and it is possible that his coffin was not made for him, because when they did an examination of him, his nose was squished, like the top of the coffin had squished his nose. I just thought that was an interesting detail.
Yeah, they had to like force it shut.
Yeah. Grizzly.
Sorry. I don't know why I said that. I'm nasty.
No. No, but it's what it implies. Is that like the coffin was like didn't close all the way, you know? Which is probably again why he was more decomposed than the others, possibly. So what did we learn from the exhumations of these bodies? We learned that all of them had really high levels of lead in their systems, and that probably contributed to their death, but it's very likely that they died of tuberculosis, actually. It's always tuberculosis in there.
Damn it.
Isn't it?
That's a
one.
sucky one.
Yeah, it really is. Lead poisoning also really sucks, because they would have been feeling weak and nauseous. And interesting, lead poisoning can affect your decision-making capacities.
Okay. Huh.
So it's interesting to think that if these men all had high lead in their systems, that was probably everybody, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, you would think. So why did it kill them and not others? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Very interesting. But I think it's interesting to think that it could have affected their mental capacity during this journey. Through these exhumations, through all of these notes, researchers have been able to put together a fairly conclusive timeline of what happened with the Terror and the Erebus, and I would like to walk you through a little bit.
Okay.
So we start off the expedition 1845, May 19th. And then in July of that, they dock in Greenland to send a couple people home. The people who are like, we don't want to be on the ship, goodbye.
Oh,
And then
I thought they got dropped off at like some random island, but they got dropped off in Greenland, so they're
Greenland.
okay.
They're fine. No, they didn't. No, I'm sorry if I made it sound like they got dropped off in the middle of fucking nowhere.
But I am, for safety reasons, I'm glad it was Greenland.
Yeah, me too. So in July, we get the last sighting by Europeans in Baffin Bay in Canada. From 1845 to 1846, the expedition winters on Beechey Island. So they think that they abandoned their ships, went on to Beechey Island, and that's where the 3 crew members died of tuberculosis.
Okay. But there are 4 graves, right?
Yeah. The 4th grave, I believe, is of someone who died while searching for the members of the Franklin expedition.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's kind of sweet that they buried them there.
It's a nice tribute.
Oh, as nice as it can be, yeah.
So, skipping forward a little bit, in 1846 in September, the ships get trapped in the ice off of King William Island. Then from 1846 to 1847, they winter on King William Island. I love this one. In 1847, on May 28th, a sled party finds a note at Victory Point that kind of gives the state of what's going on with the Franklin expedition and ends with all well. June of 1847, Franklin dies.
Oh, no.
1848, in April, Erebus and Terror are abandoned after 1 year and 7 months trapped in the ice.
Ooh.
So they're like, finally, we're going to give up the ghost on these ships.
Oh, no. That would have... a year? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. And they're just, living on this island, just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, just, having walked off of those ships, onto the island, and they can probably... it's possible they could see their ships from the island. Just like I can see the ship, but the ship don't move.
That sucks.
So 1848, we get another note saying that 24 men have died and survivors plan to march south. In 1850, we get the story of the Inuit people going onto the ship and finding the corpse in the office there. Also in 1850, Inuit people see 40 men walking south of King William Island. In 1851, Inuit farmers see 4 men still trying to head south, which is the last verified sighting of any members of the Franklin expedition.
Yeesh.
Yeah, so seems like a terrible nightmare. But to conclude, after the researchers exhumed Torrington and the other members of the Beechey Island graves, they actually returned them to their graves there on the island. So they are still buried there. And I find this touching because all the other members of the Franklin expedition are lost and scattered to time, literally broken up across the Arctic by their very bones.
Yeah, possibly just piles of bones at this point. Or not even at this point anymore, but at one point they were just piles of bones.
Exactly. But I think it's amazing that we have these 3 graves with these bodies that were so perfectly preserved, and those were really the keys to unlocking what happened to all of these men. And the image of those lone graves out on that beach is just chilling to me.
Definitely. Yeah.
And they stand there to tell the story. They put them back, which I love when people put things back where they came.
Yeah, we love that.
That was the Franklin expedition.
Nice job. That was good. Very interesting.
Thank you. A little long, but
worth it.
Thank you. Oh, well, this concludes our special on 1840s Canada.
Yes, we clearly don't recommend going there, so, yeah. Let us know where you want us to travel to next.
Yeah, give us a year, a decade, and a place, and we will do 2 different stories on it. I seriously was so concerned that you were about to do my shit, even though I knew it was a murder. I was like, so specific.
I love that little coincidence. We can still surprise each other.
I know. You always keep me guessing.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Well, listeners, we love you. Check us out on Instagram or Facebook or homes4turkeys.com.
If you are feeling generous, go give us a review on Apple Podcasts. 5 stars if you're feeling extra bonus.
Yeah, you can give stars on Spotify as well now.
Yeah, go give us a rating on Spotify.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, appreciate your bones. And
voyage.
Bye.
Au revoir.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter,
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
at Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Meat, raisins, and pickles. Yummy.